Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today's topic of discussion is mental wellness. And on the conversation on mental wellness, I want to talk about how we keep our conversations when it comes to holding people accountable to the situation, to the actions, to the content that is up for debate, that is a problem, that is something that you want to address, that is an issue that you don't want to happen again. I mean, so on and so forth. I think that there is a method to how we make sure that when it is the case that we do take issue with how something happened or how something went down, that we always make a point to demarcate the problem being a byproduct of the behavior and the choices that were made and not the person. And why I think that this is an important skill that we all hone in on, and why I think that it's an important mindset to adopt, is because we're all connected. And I think the best way to stay connected is to recognize that people's actions are not necessarily a demonstration of who they are as people. I mean, their actions over time will tell you a whole heck of a lot about their healing journey, about whether or not they're focused on healing or focused on other things, but it is not for us to judge. And when we take it off of our shoulders to judge, when we recognize in our daily choices that it's not our responsibility to peg someone as being this kind of person or that kind of person, then we let ourselves off the hook. We allow ourselves to connect on a human level when we're holding people accountable. And I think that what's happening now is when we see that someone is so far beyond our realm of comprehension, like their values, their beliefs, the ways that they engage, the way that they behave with other people, we're like, wow, like this person is not my human being. We attack the person, we attack their character, we make judgments and about who they are as people and where they're going to go and how their lives are going to be. And that's just beyond our scope of responsibility. That's beyond our reach. Like, it's not our place ever to hold someone in that level of contempt. And so of course, if there are situations where there's a crime, there's a trial, there's a process that will dictate the person's consequences. We'll always have our own ideas about like who people are based on what they do. But I think that for me, adopting the mindset in our day-to-day experiences and our day-to-day exchanges and our day-to-day conflict resolution, that like our focus is really on the behavior that was harmful, never on trying to label someone as a result of the behavior and the consequences of that. So the first way that we do it, and I have a CPR method, and this is a method that I learned in a book called Crucial Conversations, and like there's a series around this whole theme, and this really changed the way that I approach conversations. I think that as I've mentioned many times, communication is a skill, is something that you do when the message really matters, and it's not about talking, because you're talking with the intention of being heard, and being heard is a skill. Like learning how to really position your argument or position the things that you're saying in a way where they'll be received, where someone will be receptive to it, like that's a skill. And you cannot do that if you're emotional. I find that like if we feel emotional and we're trying to find a way to deliver a message in a way where it's going to land, then we need to find balance and equilibrium. So having a balance between our emotional and our cerebral cells so that they can work together and not against one another. So the first step, and this is going to be a 3-part series, I think I might try to cover 2 steps in this video, and then the third step is going to be more focused on the relationships. Maybe that's going to be a separate video, but in this video I want to talk about content. And so anytime I am in a disagreement with someone, I really make a point to completely distinguish and detach the ideas that I have about the person based on the behavior. And I do this intentionally because I don't want to let myself go down the rabbit hole where I am telling myself who this person is as a byproduct of their behavior. I recognize that someone's behavior can be influenced by so many different things, and the only thing that I have as my point of reference for someone else's behavior is what would be my motivation for ever behaving that way. And I need to recognize that like what would motivate me, or what kinds of intentions that would drive me to behave in a way that I find abhorrent, are gonna be radically different from someone who is behaving that way. I think that we really discredit our non-shared experiences, and our non-shared experiences are what gives someone a sense of being able to do something that you yourself could never do. And so what I try to really be very mindful of when I'm in discussion with someone and I'm trying to understand why they felt inclined to do something, even if it's just to myself, is I recognize that a lot of why I can't understand is because like our experiences are different, our non-shared experiences are different, and And however it is that their non-shared experiences translated is led to this moment where they're now in front of me with this behavior. And so what I can do is make this an opportunity where we can both learn from the situation. And I don't think that I can help that person learn by matching their energy, right? So if the behavior is like what I consider to be like a low energy, low frequency behavior, if it's like lying, cheating, if it's backbiting, if it's doing something that I find to be like not the kind of behavior that you would want to engage in, like not something that you would feel proud of doing, then I really want to just be mindful that I'm focusing on the content and focusing on the impact, the cause and effect of those behaviors. And I think that even if someone isn't really receptive to the cause and effect in that moment, like maybe that's what they were intending to do, like they wanted to inflict injury, they wanted to inflict pain because they themselves were hurting, or they themselves were feeling like they wanted to project some of whatever it is that they're feeling within them. I think that hearing someone tell them like, this is what your behavior did, like these are the cause and effects of your behavior, and this is not the way that you deal with your emotions, like this is not the best way to deal with your feelings of, you know, X, Y, or Z. And I think that moving forward, like this kind of behavior will result in this kind of response. And I believe that the first conversation we have about behavior that we consider to be misbehavior, like behavior that we don't appreciate, behavior that we don't want in our ether, is going to be about, you know, whatever the cause is, this is the effect, and by this effect, like there needs to be resolution, there needs to be a move forward that doesn't translate as us repeating the cycle. I don't want this to become a pattern of behavior. I want this to be a one and done thing. So how can we work together to make sure that this is a one and done thing? And so this is easier to do when you're dealing with a personal relationship, because I'm assuming that if that person is at the table with you, like both of you want a resolution, and both of you want to hold sort of a mirror to each other and hold each other accountable for behavior that is what we consider to be misbehavior, like behavior that we didn't appreciate. And so it's about unlearning in that conversation, unlearning the triggers, unlearning the coping mechanisms. I think that when we really can have a constructive conversation around cause and effect, like how that behavior impacted you, then hopefully people can walk away thinking really critically about their own behaviors and thinking about their thinking around how they engage with people when they feel a certain way. And I think that those are the conversations that if we have more of them, then we feel that human connection, right? We feel the empathy that that most of us need, and we're not really in alignment. I think that it's really hard to feel empathetic to someone who's tried to injure you, like they went out of their way to try to hurt you. But recognize, like what I recognize whenever I'm in a situation where I'm needing to confront or have a conversation with someone who really went out of their way, it would seem, based on the behavior that they were engaged in, like they were really trying to hurt or harm me. I recognize that like a lot of the times, like if people are really that adamant and putting that much energy and effort and concentration and focus, they cannot be in a good place. Like you cannot be in a good place with yourself, and a good place like in your own relationships, in your own life, if all you're thinking to do is like something negative, especially if it like is a drawn out plan that takes a lot of time. It's not a spur of the moment thing. I feel a lot of empathy, and I feel a little bit of pity for people who are really very oriented to that kind of frequency. I think that that's not good for them. I think that that's really unhealthy to be in that headspace for an extended period of time. I want to call that out. I want to call out like the fact that like, hey, like if this took you this much time to do it, and like you were just so angry that, you know, you needed to really follow through on this, like what can I do to help you deal with that anger? Like what is it that I've done that we can address so that like maybe I can help you let this go, right? Because I think the focus of conversation is really enabling everyone to release the negative energy that does not serve them. And there's no amount of negative energy that will ever serve you. And so that's a conversation I'm happy to have with people that I interact with, whether it's a personal or professional level. If it's like a stranger, I'm not going to engage that conversation. I find like if someone who feels inclined to project that kind of negativity as someone that they don't know, their healing journey does not need to intermix with my healing journey. Like I'm happy to like let that go. I pick and choose my battles with care. But if it is someone where like we're connected in some way, we're in the same ecosystem, like we have to float and work together, then I'm happy to have those kinds of open, honest conversations if they are. Now, all to say, I am never going to force someone to have a conversation around content. I'm not going to force someone to have a conversation around cause and effect, especially if they're still trying to kind of hide behind their action. They're trying to hide behind lies or excuses. Like I'm not not going to force someone to come and really have a heart-to-heart or a moment where it's like, okay, like we need to address this kind of behavior, like it's not fruitful, it's not helpful, like how do we move forward from this? I'm always happy to have that conversation, but the other person needs to be a willing participant too. Like I'm not the person who's gonna like drag someone by their ear and force them to have a heart-to-heart with me or force them to find resolution with me. I think that there are different mechanisms that we have where we can find resolution, we can find consequence based on impact or frequency. And I come from a background of HR, and so I don't work in HR now, I work in project management. I'm very much in like operations, but with a background in HR, you really look at behaviors from this lens of frequency and impact. And sometimes like the impact is sufficient that it only needs to happen once for there to be really serious consequences about it. Other times it's the frequency. It's if things are happening over and over and over again and it's becoming a pattern of behavior, the pattern becomes what will generate a really serious consequence. And so I'm always trying to gauge behaviors from that lens without extrapolating from that the person. And sometimes it's hard. I'm not saying that this is an easy practice, but I'm saying that this helps me stay grounded when I'm in those kind of conversations. This helps me stay centered, stay focused, and also helps me keep an open mind around intentions, right? And I think that it's hard to have a conversation around resolution when we're too caught up in like what the intentions were. And we can never really know, right? Like we can have our own sense, but even if someone tells you what their intention is, like maybe they're not even all that cognizant. So it's just really important to focus on cause and effect around content. And now I mentioned pattern of behavior, frequency of certain behavior being an indicator of what that person is going through or that person's healing journey. And I think that that's its own conversation that maybe now I'm thinking I'll probably have in a second discussion. Maybe what I'll do is I'll focus on content in this video, I'll focus on pattern of behavior in a second video, and I'll focus on relationships. But content in and of itself is not going to be something that's going to create in me the need to label someone right off the gate. I think we're all human beings. We're all fallible. Like we are all capable of making mistakes. None of us are perfect. All of us are healing from something. And unfortunately, healing means we're bleeding on some people. Like sometimes we're the villain in someone's story. Like I've definitely been the villain in people's story. So I'm never going to approach a situation with like this holier than thou mentality, because each of us have always been on the other side. And while the stakes will be different, the context will be different, it just shows that we're all the same, dealing with growth, learning, maturity, healing, wounds, all of that in our own way, right? In our own unique way. And it's important that we have empathy for that journey. In any case, that's what I want to come here and talk about. Like focus on content, focus on cause and effect when you're having conversations around boundaries, around impact, around, the frequency specific behaviors that you don't like. Like never attack the person. And I think that when we preserve that person's humanity in the way that we're approaching the conversation, when we're not like slandering them or cutting them down because that feels good but actually isn't going to do good in the end, then we're preserving our connection to each other as human people. And I think that that's something that we don't do as much. It's not something that we're not really educated on, but I think that it's important that we really do our job to not dehumanize each other, because I think society does that enough, like with video games, with all of these different mediums that we have that make us see each other as other, and that helps us really desensitize from the violence, pain, suffering that we see each other encounter. And so that's how I think we go about it. Now, if you are interested in more conversations around self-mastery, we do host live events on my website at least twice a month, every month for the foreseeable future. Now, these events are paid events, so check out the package plans we have as well, so that you can have conversations with like-minded people around self-mastery, around cultivating these soft skills required to really make the best out of life, make the best out of this human experience by learning the types of skills that help you really work with people, talk with people, engage with people, resolve conflict with people, all of the things that we're going to be doing with people regardless, but doing it from a place where we feel centered, we feel grounded, we feel capable of leveraging the tools at our disposal to walk away from those situations feeling good about how we showed up. We also do provide parent-child workshops focusing on leadership development in children as leadership development in juvenescence, and we think that leadership starts at a very young age. All of us have the ability to grow our inner leader, and we think, and our proof of concept really caters to 4 key areas of development that really build into leadership quotient and leadership potential, and that's building on self-concept, self-efficacy, compassion, and autonomy. So that was it for now. Thank you again so much for tuning in, and I look forward to chatting with all of you very soon. We'll talk to you later.